Hey guys, welcome to the second part of my tutorial. I did go over step one, which was your introduction of the ad. By the way that you choose to organize your presentation is completely up to you. I would say it makes sense to me for each person in the group to be responsible for one part of the presentation. So for example, one person might do the introduction of the ad campaign, and then another person might focus on pathos, and another person might focus on ethos. Or you guys might like the style of going back and forth, which is so much more engaging, but it's also more difficult to do. So I think the way that you would choose to structure and organize your presentation is really up to you. So I'll leave that for you to figure out yourself and with your fellow group members. But let's take a look at step two. This is the actual rhetorical analysis that you're going to be doing. It's basically the heart of your presentation. You are looking at these ad campaigns closely, the advertising closely, and you're trying to argue whether or not the campaign succeeds or fails. And why does it succeed or why does it fail really depends on the following techniques. These are the main ones, although purpose, author, target audience, all of that matter, but these four techniques, more like five, but I kind of put together composition and style. These techniques are really what create or break the strength of a campaign. So number one is pathos. The reason why I put pathos first is because the emotional element of advertisements dominate. So all advertisements have pathos. Now, whether you think that pathos is strong or whether it pushes limits or whether it's just kind of weakly portrayed, that's up to you and that's going to be part of your argument. In your pathos section, keep in mind that's supposed to be your emotional argument. You want to use Jib Fowles's appeals. It's going to make sense after you read Jib Fowles's article, but basically Jib Fowles gives us 15 different emotional appeals that advertisements use. So I just thought out of the 15 that he gives to us, that he offers, which of those appeals best fits with the advertisements you're using. So I think, you might end up focusing on one or two appeals. Maybe one advertisement uses one appeal, maybe the other one uses another one. You shouldn't create a list of appeals. There really should not be more than 3 that you're discussing, because ultimately the goal is to show the way that you are connecting Jib Fowles's article to your own advertising campaign, your chosen advertising campaign. So the pathos portion is really like a breakdown of the way the advertisements use pathos. Maybe your argument is going to be on the successful way, or your argument is going to be on the weak way that it uses pathos. Then comes the ethos. Now, ethos we know is the ethical appeal. We know that it has to do with morality, it has to do with credibility. And for that portion, I do think researching a little bit about the company is necessary. So that kind of goes to my second source requirement, which is using the company's website. Most of these companies have websites, or there's like information that you can discover about the company in their about section or their history section. The ethos portion is really about the way that the company builds trust in their advertising. Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's implicit. It's not easy. That's why this is all part of critical thinking abilities. The ethos sometimes is very subtle. It might be in the fine print of an advertising campaign. It might be in the form of a website. It might be in the form of a phone number. Keep in mind, all of these little details that a company decides to put in their advertising, all of those details are meant to show that the company is credible in one way or another. sometimes it might not work. Like, for example, ethos could also be the face of the campaign. So if, let's say, the company decides to choose a celebrity to be the face of their campaign, but then the celebrity is somebody that doesn't really have credibility in that particular field that they're advertising, you might be like, okay, that doesn't quite work because this is not the best person to represent the campaign. By the way, if you, in your presentation, in your analysis, want to also offer, alternatives, like what the company could have done to make this campaign more of a success, or what the company could have done to even strengthen their campaign even more, I think that's a level of analysis that I would be so impressed to see. So aside from ethos, we also have logos. The logos is actually the factual information that a company uses. So if you have a really strong advertising campaign that you release, chances are you're going to have logos in there. But the logos might be very subtle. One time, there was a few times actually, a few students chose campaigns that it's like a commercial ad, and they were like, oh, there is no logos in the advertisement. But when I was watching the commercial, I realized that, let's say it's like a bleach advertisement. Somewhere in the commercial, like near the end, there's a percentage there, like kills 99.9% of germs. Well, that's a statistic, and that's supposed to be factual information that the company is using. Whether or not that factual information is indeed a fact, or if it's a selling point, that's part of your analysis. So that's ultimately what I would like to see. Logos might also be in the form of definitions or analogies, like comparisons, logical comparisons that the company's trying to make. I think the toughest part for you guys is going to be the ethos and the logos, not the pathos. The pathos is easy to find, and the composition and style is just like, that's easy to find as well, but the ethos and logos are pretty challenging. The last part of your rhetorical analysis should really analyze the campaign's composition and style. I put these together. Now, composition means the overall structure of the advertising. If they decided to structure it in this unique way, like for example, some companies decide to do like movie-like themes, where the advertisement is in the form of a movie. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Extra Gum commercials. It has like Falling in Love with You, the Elvis Presley song, but it's like a different cover of that song. And the whole commercial advertisement is like a romance, and it's a romantic movie. And ultimately, it connects to the product that they're trying to sell. So that's what I mean, where the composition is the structure of the campaign. It has to do with the font that they're using, the slogans that they're using, the way that they're positioning the letters or the images in the campaign, even the music that they're using in their commercial ads. So the composition is really like the details that create the visually appealing or unappealing campaign. And that's ultimately where you're going to argue. And I think chapter 6 slideshow that I created goes into that in more detail, because I try to show you guys some examples that fail. The style, ultimately, what is the style? Is the style supposed to be humorous? Is there a certain tone that the advertising gives off? Is it overly serious and dramatic, or is it supposed to be a type of comedy? Does the style cross any lines? Do you think it could offend audiences? Do you think it's inclusive? Or does it seem to isolate certain people and certain audiences? So I think like the heart of your presentation is going to be step 2. And then when you get to step 3, I really want you guys, because this is a critical thinking class and you do have to anticipate rebuttals all along the way. I sometimes watch debates, even in arguments that I don't believe in, just to see, the way that these people debate. Probably one of my favorite debaters is Candace Owens. She's just got a way with words, and sometimes like I want to disagree with her, especially about climate change. I want to say something like that I could counter her, but she's such an amazing debater and is almost like anticipating all of her opponents that are going to be throwing these arguments at her, and she already knows those arguments are coming. It's amazing, and that's what counter arguments are supposed to be for. You're supposed to show that you are aware of the opposite side of this argument and that you have a rebuttal against it. So I would like you guys, if you decide to choose the position where you are defending the campaign, for you to think of a counter argument that the opponents might say in opposition, to your position. Or if you're, again, taking the opposite side, what might the proponents of the campaign argue? This is, again, one part of your presentation, and I think one or two counter arguments will do the trick, and it'll also allow the rest of us to see your critical thinking skills. And, finally, I already kind of mentioned this. You do need to use 3 outside sources. The Jib Fowles article, which I would like you to use in your pathos section, the company's website, some information about the company itself, maybe their date of establishment or other factors. You're going to use that in the ethos section. And finally, a source that you choose yourself. Now, this source might be like an article from a magazine, a newspaper, a journal. As long as it's credible, I'm okay with it. So maybe it might be like a third party that is analyzing the ad and offering commentary on it. If that's what you want to do, you can incorporate a source like that. The next part of your presentation is to create discussion questions, because this is, after all, supposed to be, interactive. So when you create your discussion questions, I would like you to ask your audience members, us, so speak directly to us, ask these questions. These questions should be relevant, they should be specific, they should be insightful, they should really generate discussion. So it's not supposed to be like, do you like this advertisement? I mean, that's not a very good critical thinking question that promotes discussion. So think about questions that are going to be interesting enough for audience members to want to answer. And the audience is going to answer each question that every single group gives off. So 2 questions total. Please make sure you contextualize them. I think it goes without saying, this is a presentation, so I'm looking for some visuals, maybe some pictures in your presentation, maybe some relevant images, maybe, I don't know, like it might be a video about the campaign that you would like to show. I think visuals allow for the audience to learn in a different way, and that's why I would like you to have visuals in your presentation. It just kind of like gets us, to want to watch. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just going to be a straight lecture, and that's boring. And finally, I do want to see something written down that is going to help the rest of us follow along. Now, what's that something? For step 7, you might want to share the slideshow that you created. If you didn't create a slideshow, you might want to show an outline that you created. I did have an outline for you guys. Maybe you might want to share that outline. What's the point of step 7? The point is that if we happen to miss an important part of your presentation, we can still look at the outline or look at the slideshow and be caught up in what we may have missed, because grading each other is a very serious task, which is why I want to make sure we do not miss anything, and that's why I put step 7 there.